Hi, my name is Ashish, and in this video we will see how to create a zonal cluster in Google Kubernetes engine. So what exactly is the Google Kubernetes engine? It is secured and managed Kubernetes service with 4-way autoscaling and multi-cluster support. So if you are new to GCP, then you would get $300 worth in free credits to spend on Google Cloud during the first 90 days. So you can try Google Kubernetes engine for free. So it would start quickly with single click clusters. It leverages a high availability control plane, including multi-zonal and regional clusters. It eliminates operational overhead with auto repair, auto upgrade, and release channels. It is secured by default, including vulnerability scanning of container images and data encryption. It is integrated cloud monitoring with infrastructure, application, and Kubernetes specific views. So let me just quickly log on to the GCP console and create a zonal cluster from there. And create a zonal cluster. Thank you. I'm logged on to my GCP, and if you have not created a project, then you would have to create a project here. So if I go to my dashboard, so this is the project I have in which I'm creating all my resources. So if you will click on there, you would see all of the services that are available, and we will use GKs, that is the Google Kubernetes engine, to create a zonal cluster. So let me scroll up. Here it is under compute. I click on here, I click on clusters. I'm here onto the cluster, so I don't want to deploy a container. If you want to follow Google use case documentation to create a guest book with Redis and PHP and deploy it on GKE, that is Google Kubernetes engine, you can follow this. But we're going to start with creating the cluster from scratch, and then later on I will make one project or one use case wherein I'll show you the usage of all these components tied together. So let me click on create cluster. It will take few seconds, and it says cluster basics. The new cluster will be created with the name, version, and in the location that you specify here. So you can give it any name you want to. And so it is giving me an option to create a zonal cluster or the regional cluster here. So the single zone cluster has a single control plane running in one zone, and this control plane will manage workloads on the nodes running in the same zone. But if I would create a multi-zonal cluster, the nodes will run in multiple zones, but it has only single replica of the control plane. So if you need higher availability for the control plane, consider creating a regional cluster instead. I'll show you how to do that, but first of all, let me create it with the zonal cluster. And you can either use Google Kubernetes Engine API if you want to use gcloud or gcloud init or gcloud config to create it. So I will use gcloud init, gcloud config later, but from now let's create it from the console. So let me select the name of the cluster. You can create it cluster 1 or test cluster 1, whatever you want to, right? Test cluster 1. Select the type as zone, and then your zone would be the desired zone in which you want to deploy it. US East 1B. Let's go with US East 1B. And then you can specify default node location. You want to create it in the US East 1B location, 1C or 1D, whatever you want to do. So I will keep the control plane through which I'll manage the nodes and all the nodes in the same location, that is US East 1B, which is by default selected, which is my master zone. And then if you will scroll down, the master version, choose a release channel for automatic management of your cluster's version and upgrade And so for this I will use the master version, static version, or if you want to use release channel, right? Then if you must specify a static version, ensure that auto upgrade is enabled for your node pool. So let's say I want to use this version. So then make sure that auto upgrade is available if you're using a static version like here. Any version that you want to go for in this region, right? But if you want to use release channel, then this is the default and this is the latest or the default version that is available. Right now, if you will see that from the navigation pane, you can, under node pools, you can click on default. So if you want to click on add node pools, so if you scroll up, you see this node pools default nodes, right? So these node settings will be used when new nodes are created using this node pool. And if you will click on default pool here, you can rename for the default node pool as well. So you can test node pool for your GKE cluster. Number of nodes, you can choose the node version, you can choose the number of nodes, you can go for 2 here, and you can select auto scaling. Minimum nodes would be 1, maximum mode would be 2. So you can do this. If you don't want to do it, you can uncheck it. You can specify the node location. You can it is enable auto upgrade is selected for the release channel node that we created. Now if you will click on nodes here, and if you wish choose the image type, you can choose the image type or the desired node image that you want to select. If you want it for Windows, you want it for container optimized OS, you want for Ubuntu, whatever you want. So you have Windows servers LTSC, you can use a Windows Server semi-annual channel images or Windows Server long-term servicing channel images. And these all Windows node images are Windows Server data center core images. And a single cluster can have multiple Windows Server node pools using different Windows Server version. But each individual node pool can only use one Windows same server version. So if I would have to select this one for Windows like this. So in this node pool, I would have to make sure that I have Windows like 2019 or 2016. But I can use different node pools as well. So I can go with container optimized OS default. And these are based on recent version of the Linux kernel and are optimized to enhance node security. Container optimized OS images are backed by a team at Google that can quickly patch images for security and iterate on features. So you can use your machine configuration, E2, N2, N2D or first generation, whatever you want to. Your machine type would be E2 micro or E2 small, E2 medium. You can use E2 micro for the lab. And then if you would choose for the boot disk size, boot disk type, you can select this desired boot disk type as well. And you can enable customer manage encryption for boot disk as well. You can enable permittable nodes as well. Maximum nodes per use, and you can use security here. You can use metadata here, and then you can click on create. Here you click on create. It is submitting the deployment. Let's see what we got here. So it is creating my first zonal cluster. And same way you can create a regional cluster, you can create private cluster, you can create alpha cluster, you can creating a cluster using Windows node pools as well. And then you can, when the cluster is created, you can connect to that cluster and you can, administer that cluster as well. This cluster is getting created, and in the next video we will see how to configure cluster access for the Google Kubernetes engine for kubectl. So I hope you liked this video. I'll be back with another video wherein we'll configure the cluster access for kubectl. Till next time, have a good day ahead.